Welcome back to Manga Story, and now in our last video we watched as Guts took on Emperor Ganishka in his giant thunder elemental form, not being able to deal a single blow. But during that time, Zodd also made a move with his monster army, throwing themselves at Ganishka and failing just as Guts did. After Zodd attempted an attack, he was electrocuted and sent crashing into the waters below, right where Guts was standing. As Zodd plunges into the sea, he begins to have a flashback to just before he was sent out to battle. Just before leaving, he saw Sonya standing there, and she told him that there will be a point in time where he must choose. Either he'll exchange blows once again with the blade that once tore through his flesh, or wield it as a weapon. Wild madness or resolute will, beast or warrior. The same goes for the other one as well. Zodd asks, "What do you mean?" And Sonya simply tells him, "The one that you admire." Still wondering, Zodd asks again, "What do you mean?" And Sonya shakes her head, telling him, "Who knows?" Zodd groans, telling her, "So this is what prophecies are like." Back in the current time, Zodd takes a sharp turn through the water, and he rockets himself back out, and on his back is Guts. Zodd looks down, telling him that he never thought that they would cross paths again. And Guts starts to realize where he is and grits his teeth, telling himself that if he cuts through his neck, he can kill Zodd right now. Zodd looks into Guts' eyes, seeing that look, and he tells him, "Such murderous intent." But before the two could respond to each other, there's a flash of light, and they both look down towards Ganishka, who is staring right at them. Guts looks back at Zodd and he asks, "What's with you, the immortal Zodd getting thrown around like that?" And Zodd tells him, "You prattle easily for a passenger, but as you can see, there is no pike that can pierce the mist." Sheer K telepathically calls out to Guts, asking if he's alright, and Guts says, "Yeah, even though things have taken an unexpected turn." Guts then asks, "How does the old man's body even work? She's the magician here. Can't she do something?" Shirake tells him that Ganishka is most likely gathering the elementals of wind and water, using the water energy around his astral body to project his form. His astral body is somewhere deep within the layers of the projections, and no conventional weapon will have any effect on him. Zodd flies by a sail, almost knocking Guts off, and Guts takes his sword, pressing it to Zodd's neck, telling him that if he wants to keep his head, he better listen to what he says. They'll settle their score later, but right now he's going to cleave a hole into that man. Zodd asks, "Didn't you hear me before? There's no weapon that'll pierce such a being." Guts tells him, "If you're looking for a weapon that can cut mist, you got one right here." Zodd thinks back to what Sonya told him about him having no choice of wielding something as a weapon. He grins with excitement and tells Guts to withdraw his sword. He will do as he bids, and he will be given a chance to tear that mist into shreds. Guts then shouts back to Shirake, asking where is Ganishka's astral body, and Shirake yells that he can't do it. He must turn back. Guts gets louder, telling her that there's no time, she needs to hurry. And Shirake begins to focus and then says the forehead right between the eyes. Guts grits his teeth, and him and Zodd fly straight towards Ganishka, right into the thunderstorm. Lightning begins to hit the two of them, and Zodd starts to push through as Guts holds out his sword. While the two scream in pain, they barrel through, cutting a hole right between his eyes. And once they get through, Zodd loses control, flying down, crashing into the stones along the pier. Meanwhile, over in Ganishka's chambers, he yells in pain, and as the guards run in to check on him, he touches his forehead and says, "You scum." Back in the city, the mist and the Daka begin to pull back, and everyone runs over to check on Guts with Zodd towering out of the water. He steps up onto the walkway, and both he and Guts are still smoldering from being electrocuted. Zodd shouts, asking, "What's the matter? Didn't you say something about settling a score? Stand up and show me, or you'll be torn to pieces." As Guts lays unconscious on the ground, his hand slowly reaches out for his sword, and he begins to get up. Zodd waits, inspecting Guts, and he says that he will leave their match for another time. Until that time comes, we can both shower in blood to our heart's content. Just then, an apostle flies down, asking if that is the Black Swordsman. He was the one branded to be offered as a sacrifice. It's been so long since he's tasted human flesh. As the apostle sticks his head out to bite down onto Guts, Zodd grabs him by the neck and squeezes, telling him not to forget that they are warriors of the Hawk. They come here to do battle, not devour their desires. Zodd turns to fly off, but Guts tells him to wait. If their forces are here, that means Griffith is here too, right? Zodd asks, "And what would you do after hearing the answer? Would you fight him? Fight the one that we serve? Because if that's the case, then it's a different story." The two stare at each other, and before either of them can make their move, Serpico steps between them, telling them both it's enough. He then turns back to Guts, asking, "Didn't you say something about getting into a pissing contest with monsters?" Guts stops, looking back at everyone, and then he sees Casca trembling. He sighs, telling him, "You're right. We have no business here. so how about we get lost then? Zodd lets out a low, grumbling growl and he begins to fly off, and as everyone watches Zodd leave, they soon turn back to see Guts fall flat on his face. Shirake kneels down, telling him that he has lost consciousness again. They're going to need to hurry and get him somewhere where they can treat him. Roderick tells the group that they should hurry and get him to his ship. They can help him there. Ishidora then shouts that they found a small boat that they can take to Roderick's ships. As everyone begins to load Guts in, Puck notices someone sleeping in the boat. Before he could say anything, Evalaria pulls him away, stating that they've got work to do. Come on! The small boat begins to drift away from the burning city, and after a while, Guts opens his eyes. He looks at the horizon and sees a figure with long flowing hair sitting on a white steed. Griffith's eyes stare back and Guts closes his eyes. As the sun rises, the soldiers of the Holy City walk through the streets looking at the destruction that was brought to them. Leading the group is Owen. Seeing the Kushin men that were once Dakas, he asks if what he just saw was a dream. But as all of the soldiers make their way outside of the city, they see a cavalry force, all carrying Kushin flags. Among them is Salat and his Tapasa. The Tapasa all ask if they should inform the Emperor about the Hawk's company. And another asks, why would they do that? How could they entrust the fate of their clan to a devil like that? The four Tapasa all turn to Salat for answers, and Salat continues to silently watch the battlefield. Owen tries to gauge the situation, but that's when the low roar of elephants can be heard, and attached to them is Ganishka's traveling palace. One of the generals asks Ganishka what are his orders, and Ganishka sits on the throne telling them to wipe them out. All at once, the Kushin archers take aim to the skies, and they release a barrage of arrows. As the wave of arrows land, all of the Kushin forces begin to make their way to the Holy Sea's armies. The elephants trample through the first wave of soldiers, crushing their bodies in their wake. Next, the second wave approaches and the cavalry charges through, stepping on the soldiers. The Holy Sea's armies start to turn back to run away, but as they all pile onto the drawbridge, they begin to fall off. Slowly but surely, the allied forces of the Vatican are being annihilated. Suddenly, a single arrow flies through the air, hitting a Kushin general and taking off his head. Then more arrows begin to shoot by, each ripping the heads off the generals. The Kushin soldiers all start looking around, and off in the distance, they see the lone archer. Irvine then takes a handful of arrows from one of the bundles next to himself, and he releases them all in one pull. The arrows begin to fan out, hitting more of the generals in their heads, and while the Kushin cavalry is in a panic, the horses continue rushing towards the Holy City, throwing themselves into the moats. Over with one of the war elephants, a dark mass begins to take shape, and suddenly all of the elephants begin to panic and stampede forward. The Kushin shoulders in front all get flattened, all while Salat is just watching. However, along the coastline of the city, the destroyed Kushin begin washing up along the shore. A man gives the order, and the human soldiers begin to make their way to the cliffs. And this concludes Chapter 280 of Berserk. I hope you guys are enjoying this, and I hope you're excited for more of this to come by. But don't worry, we have a new series coming up soon, Claymore. As we come to the close of Berserk, we will be continuing our medieval manga fest. We're really liking it ourselves. We'll see you next time right here at Manga Storian.